A dirty, homeless-looking man walks into a restaurant. Everyone ignores him. Everyone except one struggling waitress who can barely feed herself. She treats him like a human being. The next day he returns. But this time he's not homeless. And what he's about to reveal will shock everyone in that room and change her life in ways she never imagined. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. You know, there are moments in life when you feel completely invisible. Like the world is moving around you, but nobody actually sees you anymore. That's exactly how Sarah felt on that cold Tuesday morning in Chicago. Sarah was 25 years old, and if you asked her how life was going, she'd probably smile and say fine. But that smile wouldn't reach her eyes. Because the truth was, Sarah was drowning. Not in water, but in bills, in worry, in the kind of exhaustion that sleep can't fix. She worked at a small diner on the south side of the city. You know the type, vinyl booths with duct tape holding the cracks together, coffee that's been sitting too long, and a bell that dings every time someone walks through the door. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't even nice. But it was a job, and jobs were hard to come by. Sarah had been pulling double shifts for 3 months straight. Her feet ached so bad that some nights she'd cry while taking off her shoes. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't slow down. Because her little sister Emma was sick. Emma was only 14, and she had these terrible asthma attacks that would leave her gasping for air in the middle of the night. The medication she needed cost $200 every 2 weeks, and their insurance, well, let's just say it barely covered anything. Their parents had passed away in a car accident 2 years earlier, and Sarah had become Emma's guardian. Some days, that responsibility felt like the heaviest weight in the world. The rent was due in 5 days. Sarah was $300 short. She'd applied for a second job at a grocery store, stayed up all night filling out the application, even wrote a cover letter explaining why they should hire her. They called her back the day before. "We're sorry, but we've decided to go with someone else." She'd cried in the bathroom after that call. Quiet tears that she didn't want Emma to hear. Then she washed her face, put on her uniform, and went to work. Because that's what you do when someone depends on you. You keep going. So there she was, Tuesday morning, tying her apron in the back room of Murphy's Diner, trying to convince herself that somehow, some way, things would work out. Her manager, a man named Dale who seemed to enjoy making people feel small, walked past her without a word. He never said good morning. Never asked how she was doing. To Dale, Sarah was just another worker who could be replaced. The breakfast rush came and went. Scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, coffee refills. The same orders over and over. Sarah smiled at the customers, laughed at their jokes, made small talk about the weather. But inside, she felt hollow. Like she was performing a role in a play that never ended. Around 10:30, the bell above the door dinged again. Sarah glanced up from wiping down a table and saw him. A man stood in the doorway, and honestly, he looked rough. His clothes were torn and dirty, hanging off his thin frame like they were 3 sizes too big. His hair was matted, his beard wild and unkempt. His eyes, they were the saddest eyes Sarah had ever seen. Tired. Empty. Like he'd given up on asking the world for anything. He didn't say a word. Just shuffled to a corner booth and sat down, his hands folded on the table in front of him. The diner went quiet. People stared. A woman in the booth next to him grabbed her purse and moved to a different table. A man in a business suit wrinkled his nose and looked away. You could feel the judgment in the air, thick and uncomfortable. Dale appeared from the back, his arms crossed. He caught Sarah's eye and shook his head firmly. A clear message, don't serve him. But Sarah just stood there, looking at this man in the corner. And you know what she saw? She didn't see someone dangerous. She didn't see someone to be afraid of. She saw someone who was hungry. Someone who was alone. Someone who probably hadn't been treated like a human being in a very long time. Her heart did this thing, this pull, that she couldn't ignore. Maybe it was because she knew what it felt like to be invisible. Maybe it was because she'd been raised to believe that kindness mattered, even when it was hard. Or maybe it was just because she couldn't walk away. Sarah grabbed the coffee pot and walked over to his table. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice gentle. "Would you like some coffee?" The man looked up at her, surprise flashing across his face. Like he couldn't believe someone was actually talking to him. His voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. I don't have any money." Sarah smiled. Not a fake smile, but a real one. The kind that comes from somewhere deep inside. "That's okay," she said, pouring the coffee into his cup. Coffee's on me today. She walked back to the kitchen, her heart pounding. Dale grabbed her arm. What do you think you're doing? My job, Sarah said quietly, pulling her arm free. I'm serving a customer. That's not a customer. That's a bum. He's going to scare away paying customers. Sarah didn't respond. She just made a plate of scrambled eggs, added 2 pieces of toast and some bacon, and carried it back to the corner booth. She set it down gently in front of the man. Here you go, she said. Please eat. The man stared at the plate like it was a mirage. Like if he blinked, it might disappear. Why are you doing this? He asked, his voice cracking with emotion. Sarah thought about it for a moment. Then she said something that came straight from her heart. Because everyone deserves to be treated like they matter. The man's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't let them fall. He just nodded, picked up his fork, and started eating slowly, carefully, like every bite was precious. Sarah watched him for just a moment before turning back to her other tables. She didn't know it yet, but that simple choice, that one moment of kindness, was about to change everything. You ever notice how the smallest acts of kindness can feel the heaviest? That's what Sarah was feeling as she moved through the rest of her shift. Every time she walked past that corner booth, she could feel eyes on her. Customers whispering. Dale glaring from behind the register. But she kept her head up. The man in the corner ate slowly, like he was trying to make the meal last. Sarah noticed he kept looking around, almost nervous, like someone might tell him to leave at any moment. And honestly, someone probably would. But not on her watch. She brought him a water refill without him asking. When she passed by to check on another table, she smiled at him. Not a pitying smile, just a normal, friendly smile. The kind you'd give to anyone. And maybe that's what made it special. She wasn't treating him like a charity case. She was treating him like a person. About halfway through his meal, an older couple at the next booth called Sarah over. The woman leaned in and whispered loud enough for others to hear. Honey, you shouldn't be serving him. People like that are dangerous. He could be on drugs or something. Sarah felt her cheeks flush, but she kept her voice calm. He's just having breakfast, ma'am. Just like everyone else. The woman huffed and exchanged glances with her husband, but Sarah walked away before they could say more. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. How could people be so cruel? How could they look at someone who was suffering and feel nothing but disgust? She thought about Emma. What if one day, God forbid, Emma was alone and needed help? Would Sarah want people to walk past her? To judge her? To treat her like she didn't matter? No, absolutely not. So Sarah made a decision right then and there. She was going to treat this man with dignity, no matter what anyone else thought. When his plate was empty, she came back over. Would you like anything else? Maybe some more toast? The man shook his head. No, ma'am. This was more than enough. Thank you. I haven't had a hot meal in. I don't even remember how long. Sarah's heart broke a little. I'm glad you came in today. He looked at her with those sad, tired eyes. You're very kind. That's rare these days. It shouldn't be, Sarah said quietly. As the lunch hour approached, Sarah had to focus on more customers. The diner got busy, and she was running from table to table, taking orders, delivering food, cleaning up messes. Her feet hurt. Her back ached. But she kept pushing. During a brief break, she went to the back and made a small bag. She grabbed a sandwich she'd brought for her own lunch, added an apple from the kitchen, and filled a bottle with cold water. She'd figure out something else to eat later. Maybe she had crackers at home. When her shift was almost over, Sarah carried the bag to the corner booth. The man was still sitting there, staring out the window at the gray Chicago sky. She placed the bag on the table gently. I made this for you, she said. In case you get hungry later. The man looked inside the bag, then back up at her. His eyes were wet. I can't take your food. Please, Sarah said. I want you to have it. But why? Why are you being so nice to me? Sarah paused. She could have said a lot of things. But what came out was simple and honest. Because nobody should feel invisible. Everyone deserves to know that someone sees them. For a long moment, the man just stared at her. Then he nodded slowly, like he was trying to memorize her face. Thank you, he whispered. You have no idea what this means. Sarah smiled and turned to walk away, but before she could take 2 steps, Dale stormed over. His face was red, his jaw clenched. Sarah, kitchen. Now. She followed him to the back, her stomach sinking. Dale turned on her the moment they were alone. What the hell do you think you're doing? He snapped. I told you not to serve that guy. He was hungry, Dale. I gave him some food. You gave him free food. That comes out of this diner's profits. And you're making the other customers uncomfortable. One plate of eggs isn't going to bankrupt this place, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. And if people are uncomfortable seeing someone get fed, that's their problem, not mine. Dale stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. You're already on thin ice here, Sarah. You're late sometimes. You call in sick. You're barely keeping up. I'm late because I take care of my sister. I call in sick when she has emergencies. And I work harder than anyone else here. I don't care about your excuses, Dale said coldly. You pull something like this again, you're done. You understand me? Done. Sarah bit her lip. She needed this job. She needed every single dollar. But looking into Dale's smug face, she realized something. She'd rather lose her job than lose herself. I understand, she said quietly. Good. Now get back out there. Sarah walked back onto the floor, her heart heavy. The man was still sitting in the corner booth. She caught his eye and gave him a small smile, even though she felt like crying. When her shift finally ended, Sarah untied her apron and grabbed her coat. She counted her tips, $43. Not great, but it would help. She stuffed the bills into her pocket and headed for the door. But something made her stop. She turned around and looked at the man one more time. He was gathering his things, preparing to leave and face whatever cold night awaited him. Sarah pulled a $10 bill from her pocket. It was a quarter of her tips. Money she desperately needed. But she walked over and placed it on the table in front of him. Please take this, she said softly. Find somewhere warm to sleep tonight. The man stared at the bill, then at her. I can't take your money. Yes, you can, Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. Please. He picked up the bill with trembling hands, and a single tear rolled down his cheek. God bless you, he whispered. Sarah nodded and walked out into the cold Chicago evening. The wind cut through her thin coat, and she pulled it tight around her. She walked 12 blocks to the bus stop, then rode for 30 minutes to the small apartment she shared with Emma. When she got home, Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table, her inhaler sitting next to her notebook. How was work? Emma asked. Sarah forced a smile. It was good. How are you feeling? Better today. Good. That's good. Sarah didn't mention the $10. She didn't mention Dale's threats. She just made dinner from what little they had in the cupboard, pasta with butter and some frozen vegetables, and sat with her sister, grateful for this one small moment of peace. That night, lying in bed, Sarah thought about the man at the diner. She wondered where he was sleeping, if he was safe, if he was warm. She didn't regret helping him. Not for 1 second. But she had no idea that the man she'd helped was about to help her back in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a knot in her stomach. She'd barely slept, worrying about rent, about Emma's medication, about Dale, and whether he'd find an excuse to fire her. The weight of it all felt like it might crush her. She made Emma breakfast, toast and the last of the peanut butter, and walked her to the bus stop before heading to work. The Chicago sky was gray and heavy, threatening rain. Seemed fitting. When Sarah arrived at the diner, something felt different. She couldn't quite put her finger on it. Dale was pacing behind the register, looking nervous. A few of the other waitresses were whispering and glancing out the window. And parked across the street, completely out of place in this rundown neighborhood, was a sleek black car. Not just any car, a Mercedes that probably cost more than Sarah would make in 5 years. What's going on? Sarah asked one of the other waitresses. No idea, the woman said. But Dale's been freaking out all morning. Sarah tied her apron and started her shift, but she couldn't shake the strange feeling in the air. Customers kept glancing toward the window. Even the cook kept poking his head out from the kitchen to look at the car. Around noon, the bell above the door rang. Sarah was pouring coffee for a regular when she heard Dale's voice, suddenly bright and friendly in a way she'd never heard before. Welcome. Welcome, sir. Please, let me get you the best seat in the house. She turned around and froze. It was him, the man from yesterday, but he looked completely different. Gone were the torn clothes and dirty beard. Instead, he wore a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost thousands of dollars. His hair was neatly combed. His shoes shined. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. But it was his eyes that Sarah recognized. Those same tired, sad eyes. He stood in the doorway, looking directly at her. And he smiled. Sarah's hands started shaking. The coffee pot nearly slipped from her grip. What was happening? Dale was practically tripping over himself. Please, sir, right this way. Our best booth. Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Water? Anything you'd like. But the man wasn't looking at Dale. He was walking toward Sarah. Hi, he said, his voice gentle. Do you remember me? Sarah's mouth went dry. You were here yesterday. You. I was the man nobody wanted to serve, he said quietly. Except you. Dale's face went from friendly to confused to pale white in about 3 seconds. I'm sorry, what? The man turned to Dale, and his expression changed. It wasn't angry exactly, but it was cold. Firm. Yesterday, I came into your diner dressed differently. I sat in that corner booth. This woman was the only person who treated me like a human being. While you told her not to serve me. Dale's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Sir, I didn't. You absolutely did, the man said. I heard every word. Sarah felt like the floor was tilting. I don't understand. Who are you? The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to Sarah. She read it with shaking hands. Thomas Bennett, CEO, Bennett Development Group. The name hit her like a truck. Bennett Development Group was one of the biggest real estate and construction companies in the Midwest. She'd seen their signs on buildings all over Chicago. This man wasn't just rich. He was a billionaire. For the last 8 months, Thomas said, speaking to Sarah but loud enough for everyone to hear, I've been doing something. I dress up like someone the world has forgotten and walk into places, restaurants, coffee shops, stores. I want to see how people treat those they think have nothing. And I'll be honest with you, most people fail. They ignore me. They're rude. Some even call security. He paused and looked at Sarah with something like wonder in his eyes. But you didn't do any of those things. You gave me food when I said I had no money. You smiled at me. You treated me with dignity. And then, his voice caught slightly. Then you gave me $10 from your own tips. Money I could see you needed. Tears were streaming down Sarah's face now. I couldn't let you go hungry. I know, Thomas said softly. And that's exactly why I came back. He pulled out a leather folder from under his arm and set it on the counter. Dale was standing there looking like he might pass out. The other customers were dead silent, watching. Sarah, Thomas said, I've spent the last 6 months looking for someone special. Someone with integrity, compassion, and heart. Someone who understands what it means to serve others, not for money or recognition, but because it's the right thing to do. I'm opening a new foundation, the Bennett Community Foundation. It's going to help families who are struggling. People who need food, housing assistance, medical help. People like the man I pretended to be yesterday. He opened the folder. Inside was a document. Sarah could see official letterhead. I need someone to run it, Thomas continued. Someone who understands what it means to struggle. Someone who won't forget where they came from. Someone exactly like you. Sarah stared at the papers. What are you saying? I'm offering you a job, Thomas said. Director of Operations for the Bennett Community Foundation. The salary is $120,000 a year, full health benefits, and housing assistance included. The diner went completely silent. Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. That's not possible. I'm just a waitress. Dale suddenly came to life. Sir, Mr. Bennett, I think there's been a mistake. Sarah is a good worker, but she doesn't have the qualifications for that kind of position. She doesn't even have a college degree. Thomas turned to Dale with ice in his voice. You know what I learned yesterday? That pieces of paper don't make someone qualified. Character does. Heart does. The ability to see people, really see them, and care about their pain. That's what makes someone qualified. And your waitress here has more of that than anyone I've met in years. He turned back to Sarah. You gave when you had nothing. You stood up for someone everyone else had written off. You risked your job to do what was right. That's exactly the kind of person I need leading this foundation. Sarah's legs felt weak. She gripped the counter to steady herself. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Thomas said simply. Say yes, and tomorrow you can start a new life. You and your sister will have a place to live. She'll have the medical care she needs. And you'll be able to help hundreds of other families who are exactly where you are right now. Sarah thought about Emma, about the eviction notice, about counting pennies for medication, about crying in the bathroom because she didn't know how they'd survive another month. And then she thought about the man sitting in the corner booth yesterday, how invisible he'd felt, how one plate of eggs had made him cry. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes. I'll do it. Thomas smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Thank you. You have no idea how much this means. Dale tried to speak. Mr. Bennett, surely we can discuss. There's nothing to discuss, Thomas said coldly. You run a business, but you've forgotten that it's made up of people. Real people with real struggles. You belittled your employee for showing compassion. You judged me based on how I looked. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. He turned back to Sarah. Can you start Monday? Sarah nodded, tears still streaming down her face. Yes. Yes, I can. Good. My assistant will contact you tomorrow with all the details. He paused, then added quietly, Thank you, Sarah. For seeing me. For seeing everyone. The world needs more people like you. And with that, Thomas Bennett walked out of the diner, leaving Sarah standing there in her stained apron, holding a job offer that would change her life forever. Have you ever had a moment where your entire life shifted? Where everything you thought was true suddenly became different? That's what the next few days felt like for Sarah. She walked home that afternoon in a daze. The job offer was real. Thomas Bennett's assistant had called her that same evening with details, paperwork, a start date. Every time Sarah looked at the contract, she had to pinch herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming. $120,000 a year. The number didn't even feel real. She'd been making barely $30,000 at the diner, working herself to the bone. This was enough to breathe. Enough to live. Enough to give Emma the life she deserved. When she told Emma that night, her sister just stared at her. You're joking. I'm not joking, Sarah said, laughing and crying at the same time. Emma, it's real. We're going to be okay. Emma burst into tears and hugged her so tight Sarah could barely breathe. I was so scared, Emma sobbed. I heard you crying at night. I saw the eviction notice, even though you tried to hide it. I was so scared, Sarah. Sarah held her little sister and cried with her. I know, baby. I know. But it's going to be okay now. I promise. The next few days were a whirlwind. Thomas's assistant, a kind woman named Patricia, helped Sarah with everything. She arranged for movers to help them pack their tiny apartment. She found them a beautiful 2-bedroom place in a safe neighborhood, paid for by the foundation as part of Sarah's benefits package. She even helped Sarah shop for work clothes, something professional and comfortable. On moving day, Sarah walked through their new apartment with tears in her eyes. It had a real kitchen with appliances that worked. The bedrooms had space for actual furniture. There was a living room with big windows that let in sunlight. Emma had her own room for the first time since their parents died. This is really ours? Emma asked, spinning around in her new bedroom. Really ours, Sarah confirmed. That night they ordered pizza. Not because they had to save money, but just because they wanted to. They sat on the floor of their new living room, eating and laughing and talking about the future. Emma wanted to paint her room blue. Sarah wanted to get a bookshelf. They made plans like people who actually had hope. Monday morning came fast. Sarah put on her new clothes, a simple but professional dress and blazer. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked rested, confident, like someone who mattered. Patricia picked her up and drove her to the Bennett Development Group headquarters. The building was downtown, all glass and steel, reaching toward the sky. Sarah felt so small walking through those massive doors. But Thomas met her in the lobby with a warm smile. Ready for your first day? I think so, Sarah said nervously. I'm still not sure I belong here. You belong here more than most people, Thomas said. Come on, let me show you your office. Your office. Sarah had an office, with a desk and a computer and a window that looked out over the city. There was a nameplate on the door, Sarah Mitchell, Director of Operations, Bennett Community Foundation. She touched the nameplate with trembling fingers. This is really happening. Thomas stood beside her. Can I tell you something? He said quietly. For months, I've been looking for someone to run this foundation. I interviewed people with MBA degrees, people with decades of nonprofit experience, people with impressive resumes. And you know what? None of them had what you have. What's that? Sarah asked. You understand suffering, Thomas said simply. You know what it means to be invisible, to be judged, to be desperate and afraid. You won't treat the people we help like statistics or charity cases. You'll treat them like human beings. That's what this foundation needs. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes again. I won't let you down. I know you won't. The first few weeks were overwhelming. Sarah had to learn so much: how to manage a budget, how to coordinate with volunteers, how to set up programs for food assistance, housing support, and medical aid. But she threw herself into it with everything she had. She thought about her time at the diner every single day. She remembered the customers who couldn't afford to leave tips but did anyway. She remembered the single moms working 2 jobs. She remembered what it felt like to choose between rent and medication. And she used all of that to build something beautiful. The foundation started small. They partnered with local food banks. They helped 3 families avoid eviction that first month. They connected a veteran with mental health services. They paid for a child's asthma medication. And when Sarah signed that check, she thought about Emma and cried. Thomas checked in with her regularly. Not to micromanage, but to support. He'd ask her questions, listen to her ideas, and trust her judgment. He treated her like a professional, like someone whose opinion mattered. One afternoon, about 2 months into the job, Thomas came to her office. "I want to show you something," he said. He drove her to a building on the south side of Chicago. It was under construction, workers everywhere. "This is going to be the Foundation's community center," Thomas explained. "We'll have a food pantry, a medical clinic, job training programs, after-school care for kids. Everything under one roof." Sarah stared at the building, overwhelmed. "This is incredible." "This is your vision," Thomas said. "I just provided the money. You told me what people actually need, and we're building it." Sarah walked through the construction site, imagining what it would look like when it was finished. Families coming here for help. Kids doing homework in a safe space. People getting job training and medical care and hope. "Why did you really do this?" Sarah asked Thomas. "The whole thing, dressing up, testing people." "Why?" Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I grew up poor. My dad worked 3 jobs. My mom cleaned houses. I got lucky, got a scholarship, built a business, made money. But I never forgot what it felt like to be looked down on. To be treated like you don't matter because you don't have money." He looked at the building. "I wanted to find someone who hadn't forgotten. Someone who still remembered what it means to struggle and chose kindness anyway. Most people, once they're comfortable, they forget. They stop seeing the people who are suffering. But you didn't have that option. You were still in it, and you still chose to give." Sarah understood then. Thomas wasn't just building a foundation. He was building a legacy, a reminder that kindness matters, that people matter, that wealth means nothing if you don't use it to help others. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for seeing me, for giving me this chance." Thomas smiled. "Thank you for reminding me why I started all this in the first place." As the weeks turned into months, Sarah found her rhythm. She hired a small team of people who shared her vision. She created programs that actually helped families get back on their feet. She personally met with people who came to the foundation for help, listened to their stories, and did everything she could to support them. And every single day, she remembered the girl she used to be. The exhausted waitress counting pennies. The scared sister afraid of losing her home. The woman who felt invisible. She never forgot. And that made all the difference. 6 months passed like a beautiful dream Sarah was afraid to wake up from. But it wasn't a dream. It was real. Every morning she woke up in her comfortable apartment, made Emma breakfast in their full kitchen, and went to work helping people who desperately needed help. Emma was thriving. Her asthma was under control with proper medication and regular doctor visits. She'd made friends in their new neighborhood. Her grades were improving. She smiled more, laughed more. She was just a kid again, without the weight of adult worries crushing her. And Sarah? Sarah was becoming someone she'd always hoped she could be. The Bennett Community Foundation's center opened on a cold Saturday in March. It was beautiful, bright and welcoming, with colorful murals painted by local artists. The food pantry was fully stocked. The medical clinic had volunteer doctors ready to help. The job training center had computers and resources. The children's area had books and toys and safe spaces to learn. Hundreds of people came to the opening. Families who needed help. Community leaders. Local press. And right there in the front, standing with Emma, was Sarah. She was asked to give a speech, and her hands shook as she stood at the microphone. 6 months ago, Sarah began, her voice quiet but steady. I was working at a diner, barely making enough to survive. I was scared every single day. Scared of losing my home. Scared of not being able to take care of my little sister. Scared of being invisible forever. She looked out at the crowd. Then one day, a man walked into that diner. He looked like he had nothing. Everyone ignored him, but I gave him some eggs and coffee. That's it. Just a simple act of kindness. And it changed my entire life. She saw Thomas in the crowd, smiling at her. Emma was wiping away tears. But here's what I learned, Sarah continued. It wasn't just about him helping me. It was about what that moment taught me. That every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. That kindness costs nothing, but means everything. That seeing people, really seeing them, is one of the most powerful things you can do. She gestured to the building around them. This center exists because someone saw me when I felt invisible. And now we're going to see you. Every person who walks through these doors will be treated with dignity and respect. You're not a charity case. You're not a statistic. You're a human being who deserves help, and we're honored to provide it. The crowd applauded, and Sarah stepped down from the microphone, her heart full. After the ceremony, people lined up to tour the facility. Sarah walked through with them, answering questions, shaking hands. And then she saw someone that made her stop in her tracks. Dale, her old manager from the diner. He was standing in line at the food pantry, his head down, looking embarrassed. When he saw Sarah, his face went red. "Sarah," he said quietly. I didn't know you'd be here." Sarah could have walked away, could have let someone else help him, could have reminded him of how cruelly he'd treated her. But she didn't do any of those things. Instead, she smiled. "Hi, Dale. What brings you here today?" He looked down at his feet. "I lost my job. About 3 months ago. Used up all my savings. I'm behind on rent, and I need some help with food." Sarah saw him clearly then. Not as the mean manager who'd made her life hard, but as a scared, desperate person who'd lost his way. Just like she had been. "Come with me," she said gently. She took him to the pantry coordinator, made sure he got food, and connected him with the job training program. When she handed him a bag of groceries, Dale's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry for how I treated you. You didn't deserve that." Sarah nodded. "You're right. I didn't. But you know what? Everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves to be seen. Even you." Dale broke down crying, and Sarah put a hand on his shoulder. "It's going to be okay. We're going to help you." After he left, Thomas appeared beside her. "That was your old manager, wasn't it?" "Yeah," Sarah said. "You could have turned him away." "I could have," Sarah agreed. "But then I'd be just like everyone who turned me away when I was struggling. And I never want to become that person." Thomas smiled. "That's exactly why you're perfect for this job." As the sun set that evening, Sarah stood outside the community center with Emma and Thomas. The building glowed with warm light, and through the windows they could see families inside, getting help, finding hope. "You did this," Thomas said to Sarah. "You built something beautiful." "We did this," Sarah corrected. "You gave me the chance. But this, all of this, it's because someone decided that kindness matters." Emma hugged her sister tight. "I'm so proud of you." Sarah held her close. "We made it, Em. We actually made it." That night, lying in bed in her comfortable apartment, Sarah thought about the journey. About the scared waitress who'd given away her last $10. About the man in the corner booth who'd seen something in her she didn't even see in herself. She thought about all the people they'd helped in just 6 months. The single mom who'd gotten job training and was now working. The elderly man who couldn't afford his heart medication and now got it for free. The family of 4 who'd been living in their car and now had an apartment. The teenager who'd been going hungry and now had regular meals. Every single one of them mattered. Every single one of them deserved to be seen. Sarah realized something profound in that moment. Thomas's test wasn't really about finding someone to run his foundation. It was about proving that kindness still existed in the world. That there were still people who would choose compassion over comfort, generosity over greed, humanity over judgment. And she'd passed the test. Not because she was trying to, but because she couldn't do anything else. Because when you've been invisible, you can't help but see others who are suffering. When you've been desperate, you can't walk past someone in need. When you've been broken, you understand how precious it is when someone helps put you back together. The next morning, Sarah got up and went to work. She helped a veteran get housing. She approved funding for a child's medical treatment. She trained a volunteer. She listened to a grandmother's story and held her hand when she cried. And at the end of the day, when she walked back to her car, she passed by Murphy's diner. She stopped and looked through the window. A different waitress was working now, running from table to table with tired eyes and aching feet. Sarah understood that feeling so well. She walked inside. The bell dinged above the door. The waitress looked up, exhausted but trying to smile. "Can I get a table?" Sarah asked. "Of course," the waitress said. "Sit anywhere." Sarah sat in the corner booth. The same booth where everything had changed. She ordered coffee and breakfast, and when the waitress brought it, Sarah handed her $100 bill. "I can't break this," the waitress said, looking worried. "You don't have to," Sarah said with a warm smile. "Keep it. All of it." The waitress stared at her. I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," Sarah said gently. "I used to work here. I know how hard it is. I know what it's like to count every dollar and still come up short. So please take it, and know that someone sees you. Someone knows you're working hard. Someone believes things will get better for you." The waitress's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea, thank you." Sarah smiled. "Pass it forward when you can. That's all I ask." As Sarah walked out of the diner, back into the Chicago morning, she felt something settle in her chest. Peace, purpose, hope. Because she understood now. Life isn't about the money you make or the title you have or the car you drive. It's about the people you help, the kindness you show, the difference you make in someone's life when they think no one cares. She'd been invisible once. She'd been desperate and afraid and alone. But someone had seen her. Someone had given her a chance. And now she was spending every single day doing the same for others. That evening, Sarah picked up Emma from school. They stopped for ice cream, something they could actually afford now without stress. They talked about Emma's day, her friends, her dreams of becoming a doctor someday. "You're going to do amazing things," Sarah told her sister. "You know why?" "Why?" Emma asked. "Because you've been through hard times and you came out stronger. You understand what people go through. And that's going to make you the kind of doctor who really sees her patients, who really cares." Emma smiled. "Like you. Like us," Sarah corrected. When they got home, there was a letter waiting for Sarah. It was from Thomas. She opened it and read, "Dear Sarah, I'm writing this to tell you something I don't say often enough. Thank you, not just for the incredible work you're doing with the foundation, but for reminding me why I started it in the first place. When I walked into that diner 6 months ago, I was testing you. But what I didn't realize was that you were also testing me. Testing whether I would do the right thing with the power I had. Testing whether I would honor the faith you showed in humanity. Because of you, we've helped over 500 families. We've provided over 10,000 meals. We've kept 47 families from being evicted. We've connected 23 people with jobs. We've provided medical care to 156 people who couldn't afford it. But the numbers aren't the real story. The real story is the hope we've given, the dignity we've restored, the message we've sent that people matter. You did that, Sarah. You saw me when I was invisible, and now you're helping hundreds of others be seen. With gratitude and respect, Thomas." Sarah folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer with other treasures. Emma's report card, a photo of their parents, the nameplate from her office door on her first day. These were the things that mattered. Not the money, not the success, but the moments of connection. The times when humanity shined through. That night, Sarah tucked Emma into bed and sat with her for a while, like she used to do when they were in their old apartment and everything was scary. "Sarah," Emma said sleepily, "do you ever think about that day? When you helped that man at the diner?" "Every day," Sarah said honestly. "Do you wish you'd known who he was? That he was going to change our lives?" Sarah thought about it. "No," she said finally. "Because if I'd known, it wouldn't have been real. I helped him because it was the right thing to do, not because I thought I'd get something out of it. That's what made it matter." Emma nodded, her eyes closing. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Sarah kissed her forehead. "You already are, sweetheart. You already are." As she turned off the light and left Emma's room, Sarah paused in the hallway. She could hear the city outside, cars honking, people talking, life continuing its endless rhythm. Somewhere out there, someone was struggling. Someone was invisible. Someone was giving up hope. But somewhere else, someone was showing kindness. Someone was seeing another person's pain and choosing to help. Someone was proving that humanity still existed. And maybe, just maybe, that one act of kindness would change everything. Because that's how the world changes. Not all at once. Not with grand gestures or dramatic moments. But with one person in one moment, choosing to see another human being and treat them with dignity. Sarah had learned that in a corner booth of a rundown diner, when she gave a plate of eggs to a stranger and treated him like he mattered. And now, every single day, she was teaching that same lesson to everyone she met. See people. Really see them. Treat them with kindness. Give when you have nothing. Show compassion when the world shows judgment. Be the person who makes someone feel visible. Because you never know whose life you might change. You never know who might be testing you. But more importantly, you never know who might be desperately hoping that someone, anyone, will simply see them and care. Sarah had been that person once. Invisible. Desperate. Afraid. But someone had seen her. And now she was spending the rest of her life making sure no one else had to feel invisible again. And that, more than anything else, was the real happy ending. The end. If this story touched your heart, remember, kindness doesn't cost anything, but it's worth everything. Be the person who sees others. Be the person who helps. Be the person who proves that humanity still exists. Because you never know, one small act of kindness might just change someone's entire world.